Ba-da-ba-ba, ba-da-ba-ba. All right. Promoter 101. 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 Promoter 101.
Hey everyone, this is Cindy Leinott,
Kira Finkenberg,
Addie Ann Tarleton,
Whitney Bond,
Amy Miller,
Dawn Holliday,
Marcy Allen,
Paula Palazzo,
Becca Leifer,
and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
and I'm on Promoter 101.
It's time for everybody's favorite podcast, Promoter 101. My count has us on Chapter 51 of our ongoing saga. I'm Dan Steinberg, joined by Luke Pierce. Welcome, Luke.
Hello, friend. We've got a barn burner this week. We have legendary road god SRO consultants Mike McGinley, a.k.a. the Goon. Plus, we've got Paradigm's Jason Kupperman. This week's War Stories comes to us from Denver Argus concert security icon Mike Fruitman. Plus, News of the Week.
Hi, it's Phil Ernst from Madison Square Garden, and this is Promoters 101.
It's always great to hear from our listeners, and never more so than in person on a live Promoter 101 podcast recording, and you can catch us coming to your town soon.
Boston. We're going to be coming on October 12th, and we got the goods. Paradigm's Todd Walker and the Bowery Presents Josh Body, plus 3 Questions Live with Roxanne Dan's Millen, and we're all going to be there for a live recording of Promoter 101 at the Berklee College of Music's Popular Institute.
Very excited. That's just 3 weeks out. Can't wait. Nashville, Monday, October 16th. It's going to be our 1-year anniversary show, and we're doing it live from the IEBA conference. And you wanted him. You asked for him. We went and got him for you. Styling and profiling, limousine riding, jet flying, kiss stealing, wheeling dealing, son of a gun, the Ric Flair of the concert business, Live Nation's co-president of North American Concerts, Bob Rue.
Of course, very excited to be interviewing Bob on that stage. IEBA is a fantastic conference. If you haven't checked it out, ieba.org. Make sure you follow us on Twitter. Steiny is at The Jew. The show is at Promoters 101. That's Promoters, plural. And I'm at W. Luke Pierce.
Do you feel that the conversation's one-sided? Luke and I are always the ones talking, and you're just listening? It doesn't have to be that way. We're ready to listen to you. Send us an email with your ideas, thoughts, comments, personal suggestion about grooming. We don't care. We're waiting to hear from you, and we want to know what's on your mind. And we promise, we swear, we'll respond to every inquiry, and usually in a very timely manner, because we care about you deeply.
For the record, I actually don't want to hear your fashion advice, but I do want to hear what you think about everything else on this podcast. So be sure to send those emails to steiny@promoter101.net. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Promoter 101 wherever you podcast and help spread the word. Tell your friends, write us a review on iTunes, drop us a note if you've got the moment.
And if you've missed any of the past podcasts, you can always catch up at promoter101.net. This week we're featuring a reissue of episode 10, recording executive turned artist manager Marc Katz, known for his work with Mission to Burma and MGMT. He shares his thoughts and some serious music history. This guy is a music gamer. He is badass. Plus, we're going to break down the news of the week, and if you haven't heard it, it's new to you.
This is Bob Rue with Live Nation, and I'm on Promoter 101.
We want to jump right in with the news of the week.
Phil Ernst has left Madison Square Garden after a shakeup this week.
You know, I'm hearing that there's some rumblings over at MSG. There's some, new folks that are, more in line with Dolan's over there, and there's some new people that are running strategy on that side of things. I don't think this is going to be the last end of it. What have you heard, Dan?
Actually, I did talk to Phil this week. We had excitingly recorded a spot with him for an upcoming episode, and we decided that maybe we're going to hold off on that and record a new interview with Phil once he's got a new job in the industry, which I'm sure he's going to wind up somewhere amazing because he's one of the biggest minds in this industry. I'm shocked that he's no longer there. He's been there for 7+ years. He's been an executive all over the U.S. and Mexico. He's one of the greater minds of our industry. I'm sure he's going to wind up somewhere big very soon.
You don't get to that role by not being good in the first place, right? GM of such a crazy, huge, trafficked room. He's got skill sets that are to transfer somewhere. I'm excited to see where he lands next, and of course, get him back on Promoter 101. Maybe get some insight on it.
I just love his sayings. He's the first person to ever say to me, "Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater," and it has stuck with me to this day. Anytime I hear that, I think of the great Phil Ernst.
Some more moving and shaking throughout the industry, Dan. I think this is going to become a theme for the news of this week. Dave Brooks at Amplify, our buddy, broke the news that Leslie Olnick is going to exit Golden Voice for Live Nation. This is an exclusive on Amplify magazine this week. Leslie Olnick has left Golden Voice. She's going to accept a position at Live Nation as the company's vice president for touring, Billboard has learned. The former VP of talent buying for theaters and arenas had worked with Golden Voice for nearly 10 years, had her hands in a bunch of amazing projects, was Billboard 40 Under 40, Power Player. This is a big move for Leslie. She is an absolute rock star. I mean, from Tyler the Creator's Camp Flog Gnaw to her work in the electronic world. She's been a rock star there at Golden Voice for a very long time, and this is a big hit. This is a big move for her. Have you any thoughts on this, Dan?
We do a lot of work with Golden Voice and with the guys at Live Nation in actuality. I was a little shocked to see the jump because in all actuality, the turnover at Golden Voice is very low. People love working for Paul Tillett, and it's just a shock anytime somebody leaves that golden world of amazing placement. I mean, there's not really a better place if you're working in the corporate world than to get to work for the land of Coachella.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to see what she can do. I mean, obviously, this is a company that, like it or not, when you compare it to Golden Voice, has some incredible horsepower, and she's going to bring a lot of relationships with her along to Live Nation, and those artists are going to have access to those resources at Live Nation. I think that's a very big pitch, a very big draw on her personal connections to, like I mentioned, Tyler the Creator, who I think wrote her blurb under the Billboard 40 Under 40, is one of those people that might be coming along with. This could be some interesting shakeups in the business side of things.
Some other people are doing some moving and shaking right now. Amplify broke the news that the Cervante guys in Denver, Adam and Scott, have joined the AEG Presents Rocky Mountain team. That's a huge addition to that team of Donnie, Chuck, and Brent. Amazing news.
And as we record this podcast on Saturday afternoon, we've just learned the passing of Charles Bradley. It's a shocking news. He had been battling stomach cancer, been on and off the road during his treatments for the last couple of years. Obviously, an incredible story, The Soul of America, an amazing documentary about a musician that found a second life after 60 on Daptone Records, and just an incredible performer. Rick Farrell from ICM Partners took me to see Charles at the Roxy some time ago. It was absolutely incredible, and I've been lucky enough to see him a few times down the road. Very sad about his passing. Definitely going to be listening to some of his records today.
That really points out how great of an artist he is when you've got agents that don't represent or work with the act in any way whatsoever, dragging their friends to see him. Just huge fans of music because he's a huge talent. And that just shows the loss that has been created this week in the industry. He'll be missed. Also, in other sad news, RIP, we lost one of the great marketing minds in the history of sports entertainment, Bobby the Brain Heenan. He played an amazing bad guy. He was magic on the mic, and he was always entertaining. Bobby had been struggling with his health for some time. This is a great loss, and he'll be missed.
Pulsar is reporting that rival entertainment Lucy Lawler-Frias has signed on for another role in the industry as the new director of programming at Atlanta's Fox Theater. Lucy was already doing a great deal of business through Rival at Atlanta's Fox Theater. Now she's running the show over there. Congrats to Lucy.
I talked to Lucy earlier. She's still going to be involved with Rival. So this is an amazing step. So she's going to be balancing both worlds, and I think she can handle it, but kind of putting her on the top of the rock and roll royalty concert world in Atlanta. Well done, Lucy.
I mean, rock star. She got an Adele date, you know? It's pretty incredible what she's doing down there in Atlanta. She is one of the biggest names in that part of the country.
Finally, I want to take a moment to shine a spotlight on the Director of Office of Culture and Affairs for the City of Las Vegas, Allie Hamblin. She is a role model to all who know her and always smiling, making her this week's Promoter 101 Badass of the Week. Congrats goes out to you, Allie. Well deserved.
Hello, this is Sarah Mertz.
Rick Barrow.
Nick Light.
Mark Geiger.
This is Lee Anderson.
Kevin Lyman.
Joan Giddings.
Jim Runge.
Jeff White.
Brian Zisk.
Chuck Randall.
Brian O'Connell.
Andrea Johnson.
Adam Parsons.
Darielle Hyatt.
Ben Mensch.
Jamie Miller.
Billy Wayne Davis.
Brandon Frankel.
Mitch LaFon.
Jake Gould.
Gary Smith.
Jeff Cohen.
You are on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
In our featured interview this week, we're joined by the man known to many of the industry as the Goon. That's SRO Consultants Mike McGinley. This is a story you're going to want to grab some popcorn and stop what you're doing. It's an absolute thriller.
Promoter 101, we're at the Sunset Marquee, and I'm joined with an icon, Mike McGinley, a.k.a. The Goon. Okay, I got to ask right from the get-go, the nickname.
You know, when I was in college at the University of Montana, after I graduated, when I was in college, the students got control of all their activity monies, right? They took it all away from the athletic department, and they were doing concerts, they were doing intramural sports, they were doing a free daycare, free legal services. And they hired me for the 4 years I was in college, or the 3 years I was in college, they budgeted the money, but the university administration would control all the money, right? And they'd mess with them, and you can't spend it on this, and you can't spend it on that. So the year I was graduating, the students actually said, we're going to hire our own guy. And I passed the CPA exam when I was still in college, right? So we're going to hire our own guy to manage this money ourselves. So they hired me. Shockingly, right? They hired me. You know, and there were still rules, right? This is all state money, right? So those rules, so the students would want to do all this crazy stuff. And I'd have to say no, right? And a perfect example of that is they wanted to do Marcel Marceau, okay? I grew up in Deer Lodge, Montana. There was one radio station. I had no idea who he was, right? Not a clue, right? So the program director, David Schneider, who just retired.
William Morris agent David
William
Schneider?
Morris David Schneider was my college roommate, okay? It's shocking, huh? Shocking.
That's
anyway.
a lot of like rock and roll history in one dorm room.
I know. Anyway, and we were living in Max Baucus's house, who was the senator from Montana for 40 years. He just retired a couple years ago, and now he's the ambassador to China, right? So anyway, he wanted to do Marcel Marceau, and I said, we don't have the money. You're not going to do it. He went and found the money, and I went to see it, and it, changes your life, right? He was amazing. But so anyway, I became the no guy, right? For all this cuckoo stuff that the students wanted to do. And the name started as Mr. Magoo, right? And then it very quickly changed to, I'm going to say this, that fucking goon, right? So that's kind of where it started, back at the University of Montana.
And it's one of those nicknames that like not only stick, but it's a badge of honor. People that know you as the Goon are people that love you.
Well, and then, I get my first job, and trying to be polite. As you know, and when it all started back then, when I started, promoters were making 15% of the gross, and agencies were making 10% of the artist fee, right? And
I miss those days.
Yeah, you miss. I think you can thank me partly for that, and Elliot Roberts.
I will not thank you.
Anyway, so we literally.
The size of my house is affected by not being able to thank you. Not that anybody's hurting for me, and nor should they.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, so with standing behind Elliot Roberts and Demetriadis and some really strong managers, and there's a lot of promoters that would still probably shiver to think that, oh, here comes the Goon, right? But I would go out and just thought I'd really kind of renegotiate all the deals and I had a show, right?
You're rep for that, yeah.
It was.
And let's talk about the hit list, because you worked
Sure.
for some amazingly big bands. Let's give me the list.
Well,
your favorites.
It's hard, my favorites.
I mean, Pearl Jam, right? It's got to be up there.
Yeah, Pearl Jam was great, but way before that, right? Back when rock and roll was really rock and roll, right? I mean, obviously the first long tour that I did was Styx. And then I did early Cars tours and Supertramp and Tom Petty, and you could go on and on and on. But probably the thing.
So basically, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
It's Police, Sting. But at the end of one tour, I read Mark McCormick's book. I don't know if you knew Mark McCormick was. He started IMG. He was Arnold Palmer's roommate in college, and the golfer. And started the biggest sports agency in the world, right? And one of the first things he did, or he wrote a book. And I read the book on a plane flying around on tour. And the first thing he did was, when he started managing or working with Arnold, is he ran over to England, opened up an office, and made Arnold go play the British Open to build a worldwide business. And I literally got on a plane 2 weeks later, went over to London, bought a house, and established a presence in England, because a lot of the bands were coming from England to the United States, and it gave us a presence in England. And then they weren't just for somebody to handle their money. They just weren't hiring that guy from America. They were hiring a guy that actually had a presence in England.
But you see, you had to spending some time over there at the same time, right? You just
I did
have a
spend some
house,
time,
you're
but what I did is
terrible place to hang too.
Yeah,
Terrible.
yeah. Don't get me started on that. But anyway, the next thing I did is I'd done a tour of Supertramp. My first European tour was Supertramp, and I'll try to make it short in some of the crazy stories. But obviously, they were overselling a lot of venues. We started clicking, but it was painful in settlement because you couldn't read anything.
What do you mean?
Well, everything's in German or French or Spanish. You couldn't
decipher it.
You couldn't read anything. So I said, I'm not coming back over here until I bring somebody with me that can actually read all this shit, right? So my plan was to go to the Ivy League schools, to go to the master's programs, hire master students, okay? Hire the brightest guys I could find and put them on the road. So I went to New York, set up shop, and started interviewing all these Harvard, Penn, Columbia MBAs. And keep in mind, these are guys that think they're going to be running General Motors in 3 years, right? So after interviewing about 10 of these guys, I went, fuck. If I put any of these guys on the road, the riggers are going to have them hanging naked from the roof.
This is like 1978?
Yeah, about early 80s, right?
Okay.
But I was thinking the riggers are going to have these guys hanging naked from the roof in a week, right? This is not going to work. So I bailed on that idea. And as I was getting ready to leave New York, this guy called me. And he was a undergrad at Penn. He had just graduated. His girlfriend worked at the graduate school, and he saw my job posting, right? And he called me up and he said, I really want this job, and I think I could do a good job. I'm not a graduate assistant. And I said, fuck it. I'll meet you at Wolf's Deli. Get on the train. I'll meet you at Wolf's Deli in 2 hours, and let's have a chat. That guy was Jonathan Kessler. That was Jonathan Kessler. And I wish I had a picture. I showed up in cutoffs and flip-flops and torn up.
He was probably in a suit, right?
No. I mean, he shows up in corduroy pants that are too short, a shirt that's too short, and a clip-on tie. He clearly borrowed clothes to come to this interview, right?
I'm envisioning a Gene Wilder scene here.
It was hysterical. He didn't really impress me right away. He was very quiet, but he spoke 2 foreign languages. And I said, you're my guy. He spoke French and Spanish because he grew up in Europe, right? Parents grew up in Geneva. So the first tour we nailed was Depeche Mode. And I was talking to JD, and they call him Junior, right? And they finally called him and says, okay, you can bring Junior on the road, but the band can't see him. All right, you got to hide him. Hide him backstage, hide him in your room. We don't care what you do, but the band can't see Junior, okay? So we go to Boston. We do the first show. I'm hiding Kessler in my room. I'm hiding him backstage. He's getting started. And I go back to the hotel, and I grew up in Montana with my uncle, and my uncle died. I called JD. I'm going to the airport.
Family's got to come first.
Families come first, right? So I settled the Philadelphia show the next night with Payne. I had no idea what Kessler was doing. I left him and I said, figure it out, right? Fly to Philly, do whatever you're doing, right? He figured it out. I settled the show the next night with Sid Payne on the phone. And 2 days later was D.C., so I get back to D.C., and Kessler's driving the band van.
How'd that play?
No, I mean, he somehow worked, in 2 days, somehow worked his way in, right?
There's some love.
There's some love. And I'll save you the rest of the long story, but you all know where that one ended up, right? So
he did pretty good for himself.
He did pretty good for himself, and he's doing a great job. I talked to him last week. It's their biggest tour ever. The band's bigger than ever.
You gotta love those moments. Rock and roll will prevail.
Yeah, exactly.
So you've gotten to jump around the industry quite a bit, and you've got a reputation for not being someone that can be fucked over at settlement. You know how to settle a show. It's like you and Stuart Ross, no one's getting anything over. Like industry legend precedes you both. Like those are the guys not to come with it and try and get away with anything.
I guess my only comment to that would be preparation, right? Just know your shit, know everything, and prepare. And if you show up, at 6 o'clock or even day of show and try to sort stuff out, you're probably not going to get much traction. But I could tell you one story that back in the day when we were at Pine Knob and I saw my first ever dollar service charge. And I wasn't quite sure what it was, but they said it was a city tax. All right. So the next show, 2 days later, we were at Hoffman Estates, which was both Nederlander venues, right? And
that's Chicago, right?
That's Chicago. Yeah, they sold it to Sears, right? They sold the property
to
to
Sears.
Sears.
Amphitheater in Illinois.
First amphitheater in Chicago, right? 25,000 seats. First 25,000 seat amphitheater, I think. Maybe.
You had to pick a moment where Jam fucked up. It was because they let Nederlander open the amphitheater in their market.
No comment. Maybe passing on Silverman's money would have been a bigger moment, but that's another story. Love you, Jerry. So anyway, there was this service charge, and they were saying it was a city tax. So the next day we got to Chicago a day earlier, and I drove down to the city hall in Hoffman Estates, right? And wanted to do some research on this new ticket
You didn't just
tax.
take it as the
This
original
new,
answer.
this new ticket tax, right? And as we all know,
25,000 tickets, that adds up.
it went from $1 a ticket. It was not a tax. It went from $1 a ticket. And the reality is they were just trying to keep money away from guys like me. That's really what it is.
Did that work?
Service charges are now what?
In the short term, did that work?
Well, I don't want to talk about clients' money, but let's just say there was a long, loud conversation that night.
All right. We could talk about rock and roll for a long time because
Yeah.
you're an icon in the field. I want to skip ahead for a second. You somehow knew that social media was going to be a thing before the rest of the world.
Here's what I can tell you. 20 years ago, I don't know, I was done. I walked into Sting's dressing room and said, dude, I'm going home. I'm done. Saratoga Springs. I didn't want to travel anymore. They all laughed and said, you'll be back, you'll be back, you'll be back. As we all know, I didn't go back. And don't miss it a bit, right?
But you're here to announce you're coming back, right?
Yeah, I'm here to announce I'm good. No, can't remember the last time I settled the show. But anyway, so I came back and I was going to start this little...
For the record, you did offer to settle for me tonight.
I did offer to settle for you, your Brian Wilson show tonight.
Yeah.
I might be kind of rusty, but I haven't prepared, so I'm sure you're prepared. Anyway, I spent a couple years kicking around. I had my guys on the road, so I was making money. And met a guy who introduced me to some people at DirecTV. I'll kind of keep this story short. And they, it was a brand new, very thin layers of management. And I met their a younger guy that was working for programming there. And you know me, I just started hustling him. I invited him backstage to some shows and, did the whole rock and roll thing, and we became friends. And then I started pitching him on stuff, right? And he said, I said, you guys should do a video channel, blah, 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 blah. And he looked at me, we're a distributor, we're not a programmer, da, 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 da. And then Miles Copeland called me. And it was a month before Sting Tour started, and they didn't have a sponsor, like 6 weeks. And they didn't have a tour sponsor. And he said, do you know anybody that would sponsor this thing? And I went, maybe DirecTV. So I call up Goldberg and I said, how about this? And he said, and they were just starting, right? They needed to build brand, they needed to get program, they needed all that stuff.
Right time, right place.
He said, that's a great idea. And the good news was, in a company that small, like if you're at AT&T or something, you'd be talking to some director level guy, and it would take 6 months to get to the top.
Yeah.
I'm talking to the two guys, Jim Ramo and Steve St. Marie, who are running the place. One's an EVP and the other's SVP of sales and marketing, right?
The guys that can say yes.
We had a decision in a week, right? So now I've got this little consulting company, and we did that. We did a Shania Twain stuff. We did some stuff with the Rolling Stones. And about a year later, this is in March '99. Okay, everything's changing, the world's changing, but I'm just doing my little consulting thing. Ed Hugues, who was the head of programming at DirecTV, who I'd met in that whole process of working with Goldberg and all the executives at DirecTV, called me up and he said, hey, Mike, how you doing? I said, great. He said, I'd left DirecTV. Thought maybe he got fired, right? But no. He had gone to work for a company, a brand new startup in San Diego called Interview. Do you know what Akamai is?
I don't.
Akamai is a big web infrastructure company. They serve, audio and video all over the web, right?
Content?
Content, yeah. It's a streaming company, right?
Got it.
They host and serve for big companies, right? And this company was a competitor to them. Akamai, all that stuff was just starting. Akamai was the industry leader. I think it's still the largest first day IPO on Wall Street ever when Akamai went public. But anyway, Ed called me up. He said, hey, I need your help. I'd like you to come down Tuesday to meet our chairman. We need you to set up meetings at the record companies in the studios for us. I said, I can do that. So I drove down. I met Ed. We had a great meeting. I said, I can do this. He said, we can't pay you a lot of money, but we can give you some options. I had no idea what they were, but I was just going to help the guy, right? And then he said, I need you to come back on Tuesday to talk to my team. I go back down on Tuesday. I'm in a meeting for just over an hour with all these engineers, okay? For 1 hour, I sat there, and they might as well have been speaking Chinese. I didn't understand one thing they said. And I went back to Ed, and I said, Ed, I love you. I don't think I'm your guy. I didn't understand one thing those guys said. And he said, don't worry, Mike, don't worry. I mean, we just need you to set up the meetings, okay? We're going to bring our team, all right? We got this covered, okay? So for 1 year till March '00, I ran around and sat in these meetings. And I'm a good listener, right? And I learned about this thing called the internet, okay?
Not from AOL, but before the AOL commercials, right? This is like early.
Even better. So in March '00, and I don't know if you remember what happened in March '00, but it's the first major, it was the web crash. Massive stock market crash, third week of March, okay? Third week of March. The first week of March, Akamai comes in and takes out Interview for $2.4 billion. Those options that I didn't quite know what they were, guess what? They're worth some real money, right? So
thank you, God.
even better, I was a consultant. I had to sell my stock right away, right? because I wasn't an employee. So they said, you got to sell your stock. 2 days before the crash, I sold the stock.
So you were the only one that got paid out. Because everybody else's stock was restricted, right?
Some guys got out, some guys didn't. I'm not exactly sure the terms. It wasn't really my thing, but I was out, right?
Right. Fuck everybody else. I know I got paid.
Now I had a little bit of money, and I had this attorney in Silicon Valley, right? Because I didn't want to use the LA law firms, right? Hank Berry. Hank Berry calls me up, my attorney from Wilson Sonsini, and he said, Mike, I've left Wilson Sonsini. All these guys keep leaving on me, right? And he went to Hummer Winblatt, which is a venture capital firm up there, and he said, we've just made our first investment. It's Napster. And I just wanted to let you know, and we're doing this thing, and Napster was just starting. I'd heard about it, but really didn't know much about it. I said, well, that's cool. I'm fine with that. And he gave me another guy, and then, so about a month later, he called me up again. And he said, I know you made a little bit of money in that interview deal. Do you want to invest alongside of us in Napster and the round with us? And I said, sure, why not? So everybody told me I was crazy. Everybody told me don't do it. You kind of know me a little bit. If everybody's going right, I'm going left, okay?
And gets you into business with Sean Parker, although you probably didn't know it was Sean Parker at that moment, or
I
who he was.
didn't know anything, but I knew Sean Fanning because I'd read about him in the newspaper. So the first thing Hank and Milt did is they said, we think you can help these guys. Why don't you come up here? We'll hire you as a consultant. We'll pay you a little bit of money, and maybe you can help these guys. So I went up there and met Parker and Fanning the first day. And after a few days, I realized that Sean Parker was Friedrich Nietzsche. He's one of these guys that's so smart he can't manage his brain, right? Just crazy, crazy smart. These guys see stuff that nobody else ever sees, right? Keep in mind, I worked with Nicholas and Giannis from Kazaa. I was the first American to talk to them when they came over here, when Kazaa started. But all those early file sharing guys, they thought they had a vision that there'd be a social core of the web, okay? That the web would be very, very social. And they thought music would be the core and the driver of that social core of the web, okay?
They weren't completely wrong.
Natella, the Kazaa guys, Nicholas and Giannis started with, anyway. And that's what Parker's vision was, right? And then they realized that you couldn't scale the licensing. Parker went from there to Plaxo. He brought me along as an advisor for Plaxo.
The online digital Rolodex.
Yeah, exactly. And he got in a thing with the VCs there and left there. And then he was kind of sleeping on couches and kind of hanging out, not really knowing what he was going to do with his life. And he and I kind of hung out a little bit more. And then he saw what Zuckerberg was doing at Stanford, not Harvard, and realized that this could be his social core. Keep in mind, 30 to 35% of all web traffic touches Facebook or Instagram every day. And so he realized this could be his social core. And he met Marc, started working with him. And the first person that he introduced to Marc after he met him was Mike McGinley. So
the name sounds familiar.
Yeah. So I know. So I was there, and I say this all the time. Thank God Marc didn't take any of my advice, but I was there watching what these guys were building when it was just a handful of people.
So what was the advice that you gave him that you're glad he didn't take?
I don't want to they did some MTV meetings and some other stuff. I don't want to get too much into that, but Marc had a vision and Sean had a vision, right? And they had a lot of people, the Frestons, the Simmels, all these people thought that they had a better vision, right? And Marc was not deterred. He had a vision. Keep in mind, and this is all public, Terry Simmel from Yahoo offered him $1 billion cash to buy Facebook early on. And Marc just called him back the next day and he said, we're building something here. We're not finished. Kind of the same as Evan at Snapchat. He's building something.
There's some real resolve there.
Yeah.
So,
do you know how many people that could pass on $1 billion?
I couldn't. Now, I haven't had a boss since I worked at Subway in the 15th grade. It was sophomore year, right? I wouldn't pass on that offer. Let me ask you this. You've seen social media, obviously. I've heard from a lot of friends that know those guys. The movie got it wrong, that Sorkin was being Sorkin, and it was a good movie, but Sean Parker made Facebook happen. That if Sean Parker hadn't met Zuckerberg, it wouldn't have played out the way it did. Knowing those guys and seeing how it played out, do you think that Sean should have gotten more credit for how that played out?
It was a partnership. Mark Zuckerberg has...
I'm not taking anything away from Mark.
No, I get it. No, you needed both of their qualities, okay, to build what they were building. Chris Cox came along. There's a lot of brilliant people that came along, take Facebook where it was at. I mean, keep in mind, Facebook at Harvard was a dating service, right? It was just to communicate with kids on campus, right?
If Zuckerberg had not met Sean, would Facebook be Facebook? Would it have gotten there eventually?
It's a tough call, but I would say it was a great partnership. It worked.
Okay, I'm not going to push on you. It seems like that. Okay, I'm hitting close to home. Let's jump back to music for a second. Because you've never lost your flair for music, and you're still completely connected to the industry. You've been gone, but you're not. You still interact with a huge part of it, and it's really close to your core. And whenever I see you, there's always music people between you or me somewhere in the conversation. It's very rare that you and me are in the same room by ourselves, but there's always someone like else in the room, and they always have to do with music. They're not internet people. So you're very much still attached to your roots.
It's hard to leave your roots, you know. I mean, that's what we do, and that's ultimately what I know.
Okay, so your vision of the industry, I find interesting because you left, but you still stay in touch. One of my favorite things was on your social media feed was McCartney playing Missoula.
Yes.
You went in for the show, and you could see there was a real sense of pride of like him playing your college stadium, that you were going to be there. There was no way you were missing that.
Well, keep in mind, I spent 7 years talking to Barry and Terry to get Paul to go to Missoula. You know, I went to school there, and I helped the
So
school.
you're pretty comfortable in saying that show might not have happened.
I think Barry would definitely tell you that.
Barry Marshall.
Barry Marshall, right. Would definitely tell you the only reason we're here is Mike McGinley kept bugging me.
Paul McCartney played Missoula to get you to shut the fuck up.
Well, I know Paul would see it that way, but somehow Barry talked him into it. It was a great show. It was amazing.
I don't know that anything else has ever played that stadium, right? Like that's.
Oh, no. Pearl Jam twice. Rolling Stones played that stadium.
So that was a real concert market at one point. They could support that level.
The Stones sold out in minutes. McCartney sold out in like minutes.
Because they've got Adams, which is the arena, but it's a small arena.
It's 5,000 seats.
There's a theater in the market, the Wilma, but it's a pretty small theater, like 1,100 cap or something, like GA.
Yeah, that's your gig. Yeah.
The Denison is a seated theater on campus that's about the same 1,100 tickets.
Yeah.
But concert market-wise, limited resources.
Yep, there's not real venues.
It's real easy to skip over that market.
Yeah.
And yet, the concert department at that college seems to be one of the strongest in the industry. It can be compared with San Diego.
All I can tell you is, keep in mind, if you look at who's come out of that college, right?
Well, obviously, David Schneider and you.
Clint Mitchell, working at William Morris.
Kurt Motley, right?
Keith Miller.
Was it Kurt? It was not Kurt, right? It was the other guy from Paradigm that used to be at Paradigm.
Clint Mitchell. Ron Baird, who died a couple of years ago from Parkinson's, but out of Missoula, and he was a huge agent in Nashville.
James, like Yelich?
James Yelich.
It wasn't Kurt, it was
Yelich.
James. They were in the same office. There you go.
And there's another one, Schneider. There's a couple of guys working for Don Fox that he hired, doing a Pearl Jam show there.
Aaron Reynolds, who runs marketing for Emporium.
Aaron Reynolds, yeah. No, there's a long list. Katie, who's doing marketing at William Morris.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It seems like
she works for Michelle at William Morris.
You have an amazing thing when you go to Polestar and you see the response of who's there from what college. Missoula has owned it the last couple of years. The point where Barbara Hubbard's like overseen by Missoula instead of New Mexico for the first time of students attending.
There was a great program started there. They have an entertainment management program that they started that I actually go up there a couple of times a year and teach, right? And Keith goes up and teaches, Brian Naff teaches.
What do you tell them when you teach kids? Because obviously there's a finite amount of time that you have in front of them, an attention span thing. At the same time, what are you trying to impress to them going into hopefully, because 3 or 4 of these kids may actually make it into the industry?
The dean hates me because the first thing I tell all these kids in the business school is drop all your accounting classes. You're competing against $10 an hour in India. It's a waste of time. The marketing that they're teaching in the building where we're at is antiquated, right? And they should be taking philosophy classes. They should be taking literature classes. They should be taking foreign languages, stuff like that. That's what I tell them.
Interesting.
And the other thing I tell them that's really important is follow your dream. This is America. If you really want to be in the business when you graduate, the easiest path to be in the business is you got to be in London, New York, Nashville, or LA. You can do it from anywhere else, but those are the easiest path to get in, okay? So just like David Schneider did, just like Mike McGinley did, we got in our cars from Missoula, Montana, and drove to LA. I drove to LA. Schneider was already here, but walked up and down Sunset Boulevard looking for a job.
Really?
Yeah. I walked into the Gelfand office on Sunset. This is funny. I walked in, Gelfand, Rennert and Feldman had just merged with Breslauer. I walked in the front door on Sunset to give them my resume, and I got lucky because I gave it to the receptionist, and the head of HR was standing right there. And he grabbed the resume, and as I walked out the front door, he said, "Mr. McGinley, have you passed the exam?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I'd like to see you at 10 o'clock tomorrow in my office." And they just merged 2 firms, and it was getting bidding at a tax season. They needed help, right? And when I went to the interview the next day, I mean, like the first few minutes of the interview was explaining to me how lucky I was to get around their formal recruiting process. And I kind of looked at him and went, Dude, I walked in the front door. But anyway, so that was my first gig.
And that parlayed into a pretty good career.
Schneider did the same thing. Basically drove down. He was working with this crazy promoter called Art Newberger. That blew up right away. The guy was nuts. Then he just started, same thing, just started calling people and working on stuff. And Frank Rio, who was at Triad then, was one of the real guys at Triad. Schneider had worked with him in Missoula. Called him up one day and said, David, we're thinking about starting a college division. Would you come in and meet Peter and Richard? They hired him the next day.
He's got to be one of the most down-to-earth people I've ever met.
Yeah.
We had the pleasure, and I was probably the last promoter that got to do the most amount of business with him because he was the RA for Paula Poundstone at the end of her career. So he decided I was going to be her national promoter. And it was put to me in a very interesting way that he had made this decision and this was going to be how it was. Huge fan, but yeah, different world. If you have tips for people that are going from being outsiders trying to get in the industry to how to get in the industry, is there anything you could recommend?
I go back to my experience at Citizen.net, right, where the world's changing dramatically and how businesses are built and run moving forward is dramatically different than even how some of them are run today. Promoting is about picking the right talent, right? And then marketing. It's really the game. We were lucky to get a chance when I started Citizen.net. Live Nation basically turned all their Facebook advertising and Twitter advertising over to us. They were amazing in working through the good, the bad, and the ugly of starting a new platform, but they were kind of doing the same thing too, right? So we grew together. But he built it from the bottom up, basically started from scratch. And what a lot of companies are trying to do is they're trying to have the people that are in place today, the guys that are running marketing today, run all that stuff. And you got to build it from the bottom up. So my only response would be, if you want to be a promoter today, do it from the bottom up on your marketing. Radio doesn't exist. Print doesn't matter. Figure out how to run Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. That's how you market shows today.
If you can, hire Jamie Loeb.
I love Jamie. She's got a Facebook guy that's really, really good, Jay. Some small guy couldn't hire Jamie, but you can find one of those kids at a college somewhere. Those are the next generation of really good promoters. There's this guy called Jack Shannon, young college kid that is building a lot of cool stuff the new way. That would be my advice. Don't do it the old way.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Yes.
The icon, the goon, Mike McGinley, Promoter 101, coming to you from the Sunset Marquee.
Thanks.
I'm a fan of the Goon and have been for years. I'm proud to call him a friend. He's one of the very smartest fucking people on the face of this planet, and you can see why.
Hey, it's Josh Body from the Bowery Presents, and I'm here on Promoter 101.
Steiny, I want to jump into some of your tweets from the past week. Can you humor me and explain what was going on in your mind when you wrote each of these Promoter 101 tweets?
Well, I'd be glad to, Luke. What do you got?
When an agency sends a contract with a due date of the next day, hashtag yeah, right.
Even more insulting, they actually called the next day to ask for the tracking number. It was like 18 contracts. Amazingly, though, we got them all turned around within 24 hours because we care.
When an agent calls and says, let's talk philosophy, quoted to Wayne Forte, hashtag Promoter 101.
Love Wayne, and that was a great tension breaker in the mix of confirming some deal points on a lot of dates, including some Tedeschi Trucks dates not far from your town, Luke.
Does that mean we're going to see some TTB at the Ryman at some point?
Well, we haven't announced the shows yet, so I can't say yes, but let's just say you're really hot.
Hey, we know the show is stiffing. The actress doesn't want to give any relief, but we'd like you to paper the house.
This is always a call that makes me feel like I'm alone on an island somewhere. It sounds to a promoter's ears like, hey, we really don't give a shit about you at all, but you better help us, or else. What's the else?
Whenever anyone asks how sales are, you're about to get hit up for adding something to the budget that was not part of the deal.
Yeah, we've all seen this one before. We get it. It's not approved show expense. Sorry, dude.
When you really should have taken a personal day.
Something I said to myself 4 or 5 times this week.
This is a great one. Managers are always perfect. It's the agent's fault, obviously. Quoted to Seth Molaski, hashtag Promoter 101.
You know, I figured you'd enjoy this since it's your agent. But funnily, I feel like it's always the promoter's fault. So maybe we all kind of feel like we're always responsible for everything.
When someone you truly respect fails to live up to your faith in them.
Yeah, I'm still disappointed about this one.
When everyone you come in contact to today is seemingly trying to be difficult.
Yeah, we've all had this day.
When an agent is trying to provoke me into an exchange to trigger a hashtag Promoter 101 post, yes, I get the irony of me making this post. He got his way.
This one just amused me. It was fun.
That does it for Promoter 101 tweets of the week. You can follow Dan on Twitter. He is at the Jew. And if you have your own Promoter 101 thoughts, feel free to tweet them at us or email them over. Anything that makes us smile is going to get used on the show.
Hey, this is Sean Healy of Sean Healy Presents and WeBookBands.com. Happy to be here on Promoter 101.
It's time for one of our new favorite segments, War Story. This week we have a special war story from Colorado's Argus Security, the icon, Mike Fruitman. Promoter 101, we got another great war story from security staff from Argus in Denver. Mike Fruitman's with us. Mike, what's your war story?
So back in 1990, the Dead did a three-nighter back at McNichol's.
This is the actual Grateful Dead, right? Not just the Dead.
This is the Grateful Dead. Jerry's still with them, and all members are intact. I remember two things about that show. I remember, I'm at the bottom of the aisle. Everybody's got me by a step, but I'm 6'4", and I'm, basically eyeballing everybody, and I'm taking tickets, eyeball. And then I look up, and I'm looking pretty much at some guy's belly button, or at least it feels like I am, and I'm looking up, and Bill Walton, who I knew he was an announcer for the Mavericks, and there's Bill at a Dead show, and hi Bill, on tour with the guys? Yeah, checking out some cities. All right, man, well, you just have a good night there and go about your way. And right after that, there's this guy, and before Denver became known for being rather casual about pot use, there's a guy just smoking right out of a pipe. So I ask him for his pipe, and he passes to the next guy, and the next thing I know, it's 8 people down in some pocket or a purse, wherever. And I'm like, hey, man, just give me back the pipe. Let's just get this over with. And he's rather smug because there's no evidence. And I'm like, all right, well, you're acting kind of like a child, so I'm going to put you in timeout. So for 5 minutes, you get to sit here, and even if the music starts, you don't get to sing, you don't get to dance, you don't even get to mouth the words. You're in timeout. If you're going to act like a child, I will treat you like one. He said, and if you're not able to do that, you get a 10-minute timeout.
Dude, was this me?
No. Well, let me rephrase that. I don't remember it being you. So he's
wondering where you're going. I'm like, oh shit, I was at those shows.
He gets to about
pretty stoned.
Guy gets to about 4 minutes and 30 seconds of the first time out, and somebody taps him on his shoulder, and because he's not doing anything, the show hasn't started, but he's just kind of chilling. He goes, hey man, what's up? He goes, oh no man, I'm on time. Oh crap. So he looks up. I'm like, all right, you got your 10. So he's sitting there, and he's just got to like not do anything. The show starts, of course, and he's just got to sit there, and I'm looking at my watch. We're at 7, 8, 9. I'm like, okay, man, you're free. And to his credit, he came up and said, you know what? You were really cool about this. I was kind of a jerk. I should have just given it to you. I apologize. And you didn't give me like one chance, but you actually gave me like 3, so I really appreciate it. And, I'm sorry I don't have a big Mongo story where I clubbed somebody with my 3D old mag light, but that one definitely stands out.
Can I get a Chuck story?
An Oompa story. There's a guy who had all sorts of nicknames and everything. Chuck story. I remember the one that comes to mind first is somebody did something not nice at Red Rocks, and we worked for different security companies. He worked for CSC, and I worked for Midwest. We were the local usher, and whenever Barry would do a show, he'd bring in CSC. So it was a good relationship, but not perfect relationship. So this guy gets brought in. I don't know what he did. Somebody's got an arm on the other side. The next thing I know, this guy is bolting out of the backstage door. I don't have a chance to turn around and get in on it, but this guy is just running as his life depends on it. And he makes a mistake of not going down the south ramp. He tries to traverse the backstage road, which would tire any fitness guy running up or trying to walk up. And you can't run down that hill. Your inertia is just going to kill you. So the guy gets somehow as far down as he does, trips up. He's got road rash everywhere. And Chuck is now bringing him up, and he's functional. The guy's not going to die. He's just going to have some war scars for a little bit. And Chuck has got him pressed against his body so tight that I'm sure he's just leaving some indent in Chuck's side. And he's just squeezing him. And I know the guy is screaming. I am sure that the guy is yelling. However, I can't hear a damn thing because he's just pressed up so tight against Chuck that he's baffling the sound.
World is a different place without Chuck Grant in it.
Yeah, and it's a different place now that everybody has a cell phone with a video camera in it.
Shay, thank you so much, Mike.
No, thank you, Dan.
So great to hear when we get the extended parts of the industry. Security, bus drivers, and show labor, they have the best stories. And Mike is clearly no exception. He's going to be on for a full interview in the upcoming weeks.
Hi, this is Heath Miller.
Becca Leifer.
Ed Mike Cohn.
Derek Dimmenstein.
Jason Kupperman.
Jason Miller.
John Schur.
Marcia Vlasic.
Mike Fruitman. Ricardo Bacco.
Peter Schwartz.
Nick Storch.
I'm on Promoter 101.
Promoter 101.
I'm on Promoter 101.
This week, we're joined by one of the hot agents from Paradigm, Mr. Jason Kupperman.
Promoter 101. We are at the Plaza Hotel, joined by Jason Kupperman. Jason, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So we could start in a lot of different places, but I think it's timely. We got to ask the question, agent versus promoter.
You know what? I had a feeling that was coming, and we were just talking about headshots. My very good friend Joe Atamian has quite the nice headshot.
Right?
Let's see what you'd like to know. I might have to plead the fifth in the fine words of Mr. David Chappelle.
Did you know?
I did know.
Okay. Is it possible that there was more than one agent?
I will say, because there's been a lot swirling around, that there was only one agent.
I want to talk about you and your career. You are...
Career? Oh, my goodness.
Oh, we got to use those big words now, man. It's like your career has landed you at Paradigm, man. You are in a very real office doing very real things with real acts.
An absolute honor.
I mean, Big Gigantic's been on an amazing run.
Yes, sir. I've represented Big Gigantic since 2010, so I think I just grayed a couple of hairs by saying that. But they're one of my first clients, and yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. They're two amazing human beings with a great manager, Ben Baruch, who's doing a lot in the industry, and I think that we have learned a lot together and grown together, but just an extremely versatile act, and one of those acts that you can't not like. It's just fun, and it's just talent, and it's really been a big part of my success in this industry.
Now, I've gotten to promote them in some very small rooms in the early days, and it's like Morgantown, West Virginia comes to mind. And I've seen them grow into a Red Rocks act that not only has done it, but has done it multiple times now. Taking a band organically and finding them before it happens and developing in them into some of those bigger rooms. And I know it's not just Red Rocks. Like, they've had some serious milestone plays, and their businesses come way up over the span of their career and has maintained. As an agent, you have to build a team and a partnership of people that you really trust. How do you go about doing that? And do you feel that was your success in the team and your partners on that?
Well, trust is definitely a trigger word. It starts with belief. And I think that I pride myself and my business on developing artists. A lot of the artists I represent are very organic. It's about the fan. It's about the live show. First and foremost, I'm a live band agent. My acts have to hack it live. And in terms of trust, you want to feel like everybody on the team is contributing equally, and there's no finger pointing, and it's let's work together to achieve the greatest success possible. And hopefully you feel that the artists that you represent have no limits.
Okay, so let's talk about your process. You work with a lot of younger bands. What's the process? What does it take for you to get excited about a band?
So I'll be honest, the process has changed significantly since I first became an agent. I mean, there are so many artists out there and so much competition that it's hard to find someone and really cultivate that relationship properly without somebody else coming along and expressing interest. And a lot of the times you see teams coming on board extremely early just to get their, flag in the ground. When I first started out, it was really like, I need to keep coming back to this music. I need to see it a couple times. I need to know that once I come on board with an artist, I'm all in. And I give my all, because I'm an extremely passionate person. My time is limited. I talk about this a bunch. With promoting, it's pretty obvious gambling because there's money involved. With being an agent, you're gambling your time and you're gambling your resources.
You're putting a lot more eggs in one basket, too. As a promoter, I can take a shot on one or two nights. If you call me with an act, you're usually starting out early with them, so I'm risking a couple $1,000s. But you're investing a year or more of your life when you take on an act, and a whole lot of time and money.
Yeah, oftentimes you go into an artist, and I know for myself, I say, this is going to take me 3 to 4 years to get it to a place where it's starting to make money, where we can call this a career, where we can feel that the artist is able to make a living off of this. But until then, you need to lay the bricks. You need to put the pieces in place. Nobody's making money then. That is time, and that's resources, and it's favors, and it's phone calls, and it's late nights, and it's trips, all banking on the fact that one day, a couple years down the line, all of this is going to pay off. And there's a lot of risk involved.
So who are the acts right now that you're investing in, your time and your energy, that you believe in, that you think it's going to happen?
Sure. So you're never supposed to pick your favorite child.
Okay, well, let's talk about all the acts that you're developing right now. Don't do them in any particular order. Just
sure.
I mean, anybody you signed, you must believe in.
Absolutely.
Because I know I could send you a CD of some band that I found and I liked that you would probably listen to if I sent you something, but you're not going to sign something just because I sent it to you. You'd have to love it.
And I will say, whether good or bad, I'm very honest. And so if I hear something I'm not a fan of, there's not a level of disrespect. It's just that I don't feel it's a good fit for me. And I'll say it. It doesn't mean that I don't believe it. I've passed on acts that I knew were going to have a level of success. I got a hard time in the office the other day because there's a band that has a #1 song that I flat out passed on, and I just didn't believe it had legs. And even with the #1 song, I still don't believe it has legs. And
it's a moment, you don't think it's a career.
Correct. And as an agent, you need to think about where those revenue streams are coming from. Unfortunately, this is very much a business, and this is a way that I support my family. So I could love an act to pieces, but it does need to have a career element to it, because that's essentially what I'm doing. I'm building careers for my artists so they can succeed, but also so that me and my family can succeed. So here are a couple bands. So I represent a band called City of the Sun, which is 3 members, 2 guitar players, and a cajon drummer. They are based here in New York City. They got their start busking. What's really fascinating is busking. So sit down in the park and just start playing, and just developed a very organic fan base as a result.
Did you discover a band while you were running through Central Park?
So I didn't discover them that way. We discovered them through a manager relationship. But what's really fascinating about them is they work in all different types of settings. We get inquiries for private events. We get inquiries for fashion events. They've opened up for Charles Bradley at the Beacon. They opened up for Thievery Corporation at Terminal 5. They toured with G-Love and Special Sauce. This is just one of those fascinating acts that we at Paradigm genuinely believe is going to break. We don't know how yet, but it's going to happen, and it's going to be an awesome moment. And they're 3 extremely talented guys, very humble, but often the barometer for what we do is measured on, are we going to be more successful doing this other than busking?
Musically, who would be the perfect act for them to open with? Because you say the setup, and I immediately think Jason Mraz.
No, so there are no lyrics. It's more like work with Explosions in the Sky. It could work with Rodrigo. Like we were listening to
So it's fairly artistic.
Yes, it's very artistic. It's really fascinating.
Avant-garde?
It's one of those you have to see it, and that's one of the best parts is...
If you send us a clip, we'll post it on the site when we put up your interview.
Oh, awesome. I mean, that's often the pitch. I find that's often a pitch with most of my bands is you got to see it. Watch this. I'm just going to send you the video. I could send you the numbers, but let me inspire you by you seeing it and hearing it, because I think that's the point of music, is to be inspired and to feel passion. I've got another band, Ripe. They're all Berkeley kids. They're all classically trained. I've represented them for 2 years. They just sent me a happy anniversary email, and it's just one of those things where you want those people to win when they believe in you just as much as you believe in them. And it's not a lot of the extraneous what you think you get in the music industry with these guys. It's just thank yous and them putting their head down and constantly telling me that when they're in the studio, they're going to make best material they've ever made. And that's what I say. You do your job and I'll do my job. And at the end of the day, when it's that way, it never really feels like a job.
Makes a lot of sense. Now let's talk about the fact that you do work in one of the cooler agencies in the world.
Yeah.
And you're in the New York office, the flagship now, as it would be. You're feet from Marty Diamond. Matt Galley's feet away.
Yeah.
Like, you can walk into Seth's office anytime you want. Like, different resources. And And I put Seth in that group because Mulaski does a completely different part of the world than you do. So getting his input, like, would this work to an art center when you book something that has that artsy avant-garde vibe to it too? Because Seth could be a big player for those guys with really big paydays in the long run. So all of those resources in one office has got to be a great thing because they all have different views of the world and do different things. And yet, what great resources.
So we really have embraced team, the concept of team. And you don't find as often now that agents are signing on their own. Rather, they're signing and putting pieces together for the artist. I mean, if you can build a group of people who contribute something unique to something, and you see something in an artist and you think, oh, this agent has a really great knowledge base or great relationships in that field and would help them succeed, why wouldn't you want that? You achieve success faster and you can achieve greater success. So that's one of the best pieces. When you asked me to do this, I think one of the biggest pieces that I wanted to touch on was the background of my time at Paradigm. When I started Paradigm, it was not Paradigm. It was Monterey Peninsula Artists. I started in the Monterey office 11 years ago, having the absolute honor of working under the same roof as Chip Hooper and Dan Weiner, Fred Bolander,
Jonathan
Levine. And
Swanson was probably there at that point too, right? Lynn
was there. Swanson was there, but he was leaving shortly thereafter. Hank was there. But it was also, I'm super proud of the group of people who came out of that office. You know, me, Jeffrey, Kelly Stelbaski, Joe Atamian, Jordan Wallowitz, Latney Hughes, all
Jerry Lima.
So Jerry was, I think he was at Monterey International by the time that I was at Monterey Peninsula Artists. But it was right down the road.
The split had already happened.
Right. So you can imagine that it's Monterey, California. It's Carmel.
Right. There's only so many people in the music industry are that age. Yeah. And
yes,
Jerry's
correct.
awesome.
Yeah. So we saw each other, and it was always very friendly. I mean, I was a 22-year-old kid. I would see them. I would spend time with them. It wasn't a lot of time, but, you know, especially at that time in my career, you could call it a career, that was a time where I was working a lot. I was working or I was going to shows. But so I worked for Aaron Pincus for 4 years.
Yeah, I don't know that I knew that until recently. It was brought up the other night. Jordan now works for us in our Denver office, and he had talked about the other assistants in the business that came up in front of him that helped him along his way. And apparently there's a club. If you worked for Pincus, it's like being in a fraternity. There's a bond there that Aaron is legendarily a workhorse.
Yes.
And he expects a lot from his agents, but he trains, or his assistants, but he trains his assistants to become agents and become very successful in this business.
And I was going to touch on that. One of the things that really stuck with me that he said to me was, bands will come and go, but all we really have in this industry is our name, is our legacy. And that was something he really prided himself on. You know, when you say the word Pincus, you know, certainly it resonates. He's a powerful figure in the industry, but I really took that to heart. And now I operate the same way with the people who work for me. I pride myself in teaching, and I want them to get what they want out of being on my team. You know, if they strive to become an agent, I want them to ask questions. I want them to learn. It benefits me just as much as it benefits them. But the truth is, I'm fortunate to have a bunch of artists for 5+ years, but they may decide they don't want to play music tomorrow, and then new artists will come along. But what I will have is the group of people who have worked with me and been able to learn from me, and I really pride myself on that. I take that really seriously.
It's an amazing thing that you got to come off that desk. How do you get that opportunity? Whether you know it or not, getting in the mailroom of CAA, getting to work on Pincus's desk, those are things that build to careers. And how you get your foot in that door is, I think, something that a lot of the younger listeners would probably really want to know.
Yes, so
because it's got to be competitive as hell.
So I was a student buyer at SUNY Binghamton my junior and senior year. That essentially was my resume. I didn't have too many relationships. I worked with Concert Ideas as a middle buyer, but I hadn't interned at any record labels, or I knew I did not want to be at a record label. So to spend my summer doing that, it could have beefed up my resume. And to younger listeners, I probably wouldn't encourage the same path that I took. I would probably say to try out new things, because if anything, at that point, you're weeding out. At least you tried it, and now you know that you don't want to do that. But in my head, I knew I either wanted to be at a promotion company or I wanted to be at an agency. And inevitably, I decided I wanted to be close to the artist. I didn't want to be a manager because God bless managers, but I already have 2 children. And I knew that I just loved the touring world and I just wanted to cultivate careers through live music. So essentially, I interviewed here in New York at William Morris and CAA. Those were very entertaining interviews that we will not capture on Promoter 101. I would be very interested to know if any of those agents remember sitting in a room with me, but I certainly do. That'll be over a beer sometime. And then I applied to Monterey Peninsula Artists. I told my parents I was moving to California. They were not particularly happy about that.
There could be worse hoods to move to.
Oh, yeah, well, that's the typical question. Oh, you lived in L.A. It's like, no, I lived in Monterey, which
is an easy 7.5 hour commute.
Yes. So,
and I didn't understand it until I went, by the way.
Yeah.
And I had asked Fred and Dan separately before I'd ever visited, why? And they said, come visit. Like, just answer the question. Like, we just did. Come visit. And it took a few years, but I finally went in to hang out, as there were a ton of agents in that office, and you get it immediately. It's gorgeous for those of you that don't have to fly all the way to Monterey to get the answer to that. It's gorgeous. Carmel, Monterey, Big Sur. Oh my God.
So I moved in with 2 fishermen, completely blind, off Craigslist, and I would come home at midnight or whatever ungodly hour that I came home at, 2:00, and there'd be a plate of fish sitting on the table, just a wonderful family. And then I moved in with Joe Atamian and 2 other friends 2 blocks from the water. I'd wake up in the morning. I'd go run along the Pacific Ocean. I'd get in the office at 8:30. I'd leave at 1:30, and I would do it again the next day. And it was absolutely stunning. Pebble Beach was our backyard. But after a couple of years, I told Chip that it was an honor, and I drank the Kool-Aid from day one. But I just couldn't be a kid anymore in Monterey, California. I needed more than just working. And I found myself, that's what I was doing. And my family was back in New York. I had the opportunity to come to the New York office and eventually work with Matt Galley, which also has been an absolute honor. And with Marty down the hall and now Tom.
Yeah, I mean, that office is stacked. I mean, Larry Webman, Kevin French. I mean, it goes for days. You start looking down the aisles of who works there.
Yeah, it's interesting. So just my style, oftentimes I get caught up in my own little world, and I go into the office and I put my head down, and next thing I know, I pick my head back up and it's 8:00 and everyone's gone. And sometimes I feel I haven't exactly capitalized on the incredible opportunity that I have, because there are just extremely special people in the office who done things their own way. When you look at Paradigm, we are a collection of entrepreneurs and boutique agencies that have come together and have really meshed. And I will say that hopefully I have a long time left in this industry, because that is the plan. But when I reflect, even now I know that working for Monterey Peninsula Artists and working for Paradigm is an honor that most people will not get to have, and it's something that I absolutely do not take lightly.
I love, as an agency, what's happened from the second the spinoff happened and how it's been built, because I obviously go back to Monterey Peninsula as well, days, and have bought shows early on when that agency, not the agency was long going before either of us were born, but my career was looking at their roster when they had the Horde tour and all of the great different acts and Aerosmith, and it's just amazing, like, days. Like, they were the biggest indie, man. It was incredible. And to watch that happen and then turn into what it is and see how that's developed is an amazing thing. But the team they've built, I mean, the vibe of BMW just screams. The coolest of shit is at Paradigm. And the people that are there are influencers, and it's a neat thing. I mean, whether you're talking to Brandon Frankel, or you're talking to Tom Windish, or you're talking to Aaron Pincus, or I'm talking to you, or Joe Tanian, or JL, it doesn't matter. There is a vibe of, we're doing things that we think are cool personally, that we think the world should know about. And
relevant in the music that you bring to everyone else. You can see it, and you can see the passion when you get the phone calls. It's like, we believe in this act, not we're just pushing this through, get this off my desk. I've never gotten that phone call from anyone at Paradigm.
No one is trying to be like anyone else. I think that's the biggest piece. We all operate in a similar manner, that we're all inspired music lovers, and I think there's a reason that we do what we do. We want to see artists succeed, but we also are rooted in a love of music, and hopefully everyone feels that way. Some might not. Some might feel it's a business, but we're not trying to be like anybody else. I know that we talk about some things internally that are not meant for the outside world, but I think it's no secret that we really believe in our artists, and we are the number one developers. We take an artist from the beginning and let it see and grow to its fullest potential.
Okay, well, I think we've done enough on Paradigm. Let's talk about your vision for a second and where it's going. We see each other a couple times a year, whether it's a conference or we bump into each other in another office in a different part of the country. But it's a multiple time a year thing, and you're constantly on the road, I'm constantly on the road, and we overlap a lot. But you don't rest at home. You're always out there. And if you're on Facebook, and you're friends with you, you can see that you're not home a lot. You are covering shows. You're in the middle of it.
Did you talk to my wife before this interview?
No, but I know Jewish guilt.
Sure.
So it doesn't just happen sitting in a room listening to a demo.
Yeah, so I will say I've attempted to cut down on travel a little bit, and I'm sure that you understand, but...
What happens when you're a father? You want to see those kids.
Right. I know that I did not have children to have them and not hang out with them, and especially now, and as kids get older, it has much more of an impact if you're away, and no one dislikes the 3 a.m. phone call more than me, although I'm sure you don't like it either. My wife's probably a close second. But I want people to understand why they're doing what they're doing. I want them to know that there's a plan in place.
So that's something you encourage your artists at any point, even if it's 3 a.m., they can call you and
Absolutely.
ask you why the fuck they're in the middle of a one-lane highway?
No, I'm hoping that the 3 a.m. phone calls have purpose, and often they're just text messages, and 9 out of 10 times they're positive. It's a good thing. It's a drunk phone call. It's a happy phone call. One of the things that I ask of my artists when we agree to work together is, don't bubble things up. Tell me there's a problem. Tell me you're not happy. But do it in a respectful manner. I'm going to treat you with respect. You treat me with respect. Give me the opportunity to fix whatever it is that's a problem. Or let's talk about it. And if I'm not able to fix those problems and you don't feel that this relationship is working for you, then the writing should be on the wall. We work in a fascinating industry in the sense that there are no contracts. It's a handshake. Like we said before, it's a
You're talking about the artist.
with the artist. Yeah. It's a hug, and that is an extremely high level of trust.
Okay. Now, I think we're in an interesting industry. You talked about the contracts. And I find the contracts fascinating. Even though when I do a band and I buy a show from you, I get a contract. Contract doesn't guarantee the next play. The only way that we're going to continue to do business together is if it was a good experience. So it's the same thing. There's no relationship contract either. It's a personal guarantee or hope that you're going to be satisfied with the business, that of course you would come back. And that's, I think, what our industry is based on. So I think you're right. There is no real contract, because if I don't pay your band the $2,000 that I owe them, you're probably not going to sue me. You're just going to make sure your agency knows that I didn't pay you the $2,000 I promised to
Right.
pay you, because it's not worth the legal.
So going back to the relationship aspect of this industry, I work with you for a reason. When my artists come to your town or any of the places you work in, I trust you. That's really what it comes down to. I know that you are going to put my artist in the best of situations. They will more than likely have a great time. That is one of the biggest pieces. We try, when we are putting a plan together, to put our artists with those people who are going to help us achieve our goals. And so...
It's a question we get a lot, especially in the viewer mail, is how do you become that promoter? How do you become that agent? And I think this is a great topic to bring up with you while I have you. I think Scott Leslie's become my example of the promoter you want to be. That's never the carrot of, if I do this, you're going to have to do that for me. I'll buy this show, but you're going to have to... It's kind of implied that if I do a good job, I want more business. but you never say, or you never hold the carrot. You have to give me all these other things if I do that. It's like, I'm going to kick ass and be the best for you and not hold other things over your head. And then you're going to give me more business because I'm awesome to deal with.
So Scott Leslie is a very close friend of mine, also happens to be a manager of mine, and somebody that I trust and value his friendship. He conducts his business in a way that I think a lot of us want to emulate. He's well respected. He's very well liked, but he puts his foot down when he believes in something. He's not a pushover. Some people don't like just not hearing the word yes from somebody, but overall, if I believe in something, he's going to work with me. But he's also going to tell me, like, Jay, I don't think your band's going to be happy if you do this. Like, if you really need this, I'll do it, but I'm letting you know your band will not be happy. And then I'm not going to do it because I trust him.
Let me ask you one thing before we close. If somebody wants to get you on the phone and start a relationship with you, somebody that's new in the business that doesn't know how to do that, what's the best way to break the ice, to have a conversation with you? Is it an email? Is it a phone call? Is it showing up in the office? Like, what's the best possible way for someone that doesn't, and I'm not saying that someone that's doing 1,000 shows a year that just doesn't know you yet, someone that legitimately is just starting out, what's the best way to crack an agent, or in particular you?
So I don't necessarily want to start the answer in a negative way, but I know from my experience that nobody was going to stop me from doing something that I wanted to do. I got it in my head when I worked at Monterey Peninsula Artists that I was going to be an agent. And there was no such thing as the word no. If I was asked for something, I did it. If somebody asked me a question I didn't know the answer, I said, 1 second, I got the answer, I got it back to them. Really fast, in the manner that they want. Everybody's different in the manner they needed that information.
Delivered.
And I thought about myself. I didn't think about what somebody else was doing, what somebody else was achieving. It would be so easy for me now to get hung up on the achievements of my peers. But I've always just been proud of that and just focused on myself. And now I often feel like, when I talk to some people or I'll interview some people, there's this almost this sense that things should be handed to them. Like they've gotten to this place.
Entitlement?
Yeah, in a sense. Just the sense that you haven't made it until you've made it. Kind of get what I'm saying?
No, I get that, because the first year of my business, I made $10,000, and people think that was shit. And I'm proud of that $10,000 because I fucking scratched and clawed to make that $10,000.
Absolutely.
I made money my first year as a promoter. And if you ask most promoters, most people can't say they did that. I'm fucking proud of that $10,000.
That's awesome. I know what it's taken for me to get to where I am and the level of sacrifice. The reality is, it's really not an easy industry to get your foot in the door. You can be an intern at a lot of different places, but to take that next step to show that you are, I don't want to say worthy is the wrong word, but to say that you've earned the ability to then become part of an organization, it's not the easiest thing. I know for me, I had to move 3,000 miles away to do it, and I just want to know that the person's hungry and they're excited and they really feel like the opportunity is something that they can't let go.
Awesome, dude. Hey, I want to thank you so much for taking your time and being with us. I think we covered a lot of ground, and it was all great. Thank you so much, Jason.
Absolutely.
Kupperman is one of the most liked agents in the game, bar none. I triple dog dare you not to like him. It's pretty much impossible. Such a great guy on a great run right now. Love Jason.
This is Phil Rodriguez from Move Concerts, and you're listening to Promoter 101.
Celebrating birthdays this week of September 25th to October 1st, 2017.
Monday, 9/25, the Long Center's Corey Baker and promoter of Las Vegas, Brian Saliba.
On Tuesday, we're wishing a happy birthday to Ken Deans, Mike Elko, Scott Gelman, Jen Gillette, and Red Light's Nick Babetsky.
Wednesday, Ben Baruch, Sloan Scott, Rachel Adams, and Stan Levinstone from Concerts East.
On Thursday, a happy birthday to Mac Presents Marcy Allen, Dan Jones, WME's Henry Glasscock, a.k.a. the Crystal Pistol, Ken Tomzak, Doc Buzz Reefman, Chris Cobb, and WME's Abby Wells.
Gotta love the Crystal Pistol, buddy. Happy birthday. Hey, on Friday, it's a big 50th birthday to Alan Young. Shout out to Mr. Miami, Chris Miller, Miss Christofferson, Lisa Christofferson, Razor and Ties, Dan Hoffman, Quinn Donahue, and Jay Fry.
On Saturday, we're wishing a happy birthday to Atomic's Troy Layton, S&C's Mike Luganbill, and Steve Larian.
Sunday, the mastermind of insurance, Mr. Peter Temkins, and the agent to the stars, Sarah Vale.
Everybody, we're wishing you a happy birthday from everyone at the gang at Promoter 101.
Especially to the Crystal Pistol, Henry Glasscock.
You got 3, now 4 birthday wishes, Henry. You should absolutely feel loved.
Gotta love Henry. If you don't know Henry, you gotta get to meet him. And if you know him, you obviously love him. He's the Pistol.
Have him play some banjo in his office one day.
Tim Borer from UTA on Promoter 101.
If you want to reach out to us, you can always send us an email to steiny@promoter101.net. We'll get back to you. We promise.
On our next show, we have the coolest of the cools, AGI's Nick Storch, talking about everything from the moment Ghost is having to King Diamond. And if that wasn't enough, we also have Sean Healy Presents founder and namesake talking about promoting shows from Phoenix to Seattle.
Also, I want to take a quick moment to talk about some of the industry ego that we've been seeing as of late. The hubris is amazing. Saying that as one of the people that probably has one of the most healthy egos in the business anyway, I think it's time to realize that we all know that people are coming to see the acts, not because I'm the promoter or you happen to be the agent or the manager or what have you. Luke, have you been feeling the ego coming on stronger and stronger as of late?
You know, I'll say this is I constantly remind myself, because this is such an insular business. It's so small. And when you're in the middle of this business, everything seems so important and self-important. And at the end of the day, the things that drive this business are the artists that we work with and for. So never taking that in for granted and always taking that into account. I don't really get the sense of it around that, or I'm quick to remind people that no one really fucking cares who you are. It's really about the people that you're working with, and we're lucky and blessed enough to work with some of these people. So the artist is always at the center of it. You got to check your ego at the door.
Really seems like a moment that's long overdue. Everybody remember, it's about the artist and about the fan experience. It's not about us. Wishing you only sold-out shows for the weeks to come. Cheers.
Hey, this is David Britz from Works Entertainment, and you are listening to Promoter 101.